Your daughter needs a home, my daughter wants a mom. Single rancher proposes to homeless widow. Cedar Creek holds its breath the way a match pauses before it flares. Eliza Harper sits on the general store steps with 6-year-old Clara tucked under her arm, pretending the wind not fear makes her shake. In her pocket, a creased note scratches her palm, 3 hurried words in tomorrow's date, he found you. She doesn't look down the road, she already knows which direction the past will come from. Hoofbeats drift through the dust. A tall rancher stops beside his horse, watchful without crowding her. Nathan Brooks lifts a small linen pouch from his coat and spills a wedding ring into his gloved hand. A woman's band scratched but clean. I found this at my gate this morning. He says quietly, no one in my house wears it. Clara's eyes follow the ring the way a sparrow tracks a hawk. Eliza swallows, she once owned a ring nearly its twin. Nathan's voice stays steady. My daughter, Sophie, needs a mother. Your daughter needs a home. I can offer both. Straight terms, no traps. But if you say yes, there are 3 rules you should know. He names the first, the nursery at the top of his stairs stays locked. A promise he made to a dying woman. The second, he won't ask about Eliza's past until she's ready. Unless it rides into town first. The third he leaves hanging, like thunder that hasn't cracked yet. From the alley a figure in a brown duster lingers, listening. The bell above the store door jingles, someone whispers, she's here. Eliza meets Nathan's calm, unreadable gaze, and realizes his offer isn't only shelter, it's a line drawn in dust, and something has already stepped over it. Eliza did not answer at once. Wind needled through her shawl while Clara pressed close. Small fingers tucked into the frayed wool for borrowed heat. Pride kept Eliza upright. Yet her hollow belly argued for mercy. Help had so often arrived with a hook hidden beneath politeness that instinct held her guarded. Nathan's presence felt different. Steady, careful, leaving space as if he respected the ground she stood on. Memories rose like dust after hooves. James, with easy promises and restless schemes, had borrowed to cover yesterday's losses until the notes outnumbered friends. The fight that ended his life left debts alive and hunting for payment. Boots on steps, chalk on doors, murmurs at windows. Each sound taught Eliza to pack fast and keep coins hidden. Clara learned to be silent when strangers stared too long. 3 weeks earlier, mother and daughter had come to Cedar Creek because the road ended here, and the winter sky warned of lean days ahead. I won't press you, Nathan said. He did not step nearer. His gloved hands stayed visible, open, as though pledging clean motives to anyone watching. I'm raising my girl alone. She's 9, quick and stubborn, generous when she thinks no one sees. The ranch sits 5 miles west. Its sound short on help, shorter on laughter. I can offer shelter, food, and a name shared at one table. Eliza let her gaze pass to the horse tied at the rail, a blanket folded into a square. A man who repaired rather than replaced. That told her as much as any vow. People don't make offers like this without a reason. Her tone was plain, protective. Reason is simple. His jaw tightened, then eased. Sarah died last winter. Fever took her fast. Since then work doubled while cheer halved. Sophie watches doorways for footsteps that won't come. I can cook enough to keep us upright. But a house misses a woman's order and a child misses a mother's warmth. I'm not selling a romance. I'm proposing a practical home. Clara lifted her head, hungry for certainty more than pie. Will there be biscuits? Nathan blinked, then smiled. If you'll come to dinner there will be plenty. Eliza folded her shoulders against the town's gaze and measured the wrist. Dinner, she said carefully, doesn't mean agreement. Dinner means dinner, he answered. He offered an arm to accompany, then let it fall when she didn't take it. They crossed to the diner where an iron stove glowed, and checkered cloth brightened worn table. The stove hummed with steady heat. A woman with a tidy bun waved them to a corner. Nathan took the bench facing the door, a habit born of watchfulness rather than fear. He ordered beef stew, biscuits and milk for the girls, then looked to Eliza. For you. Same, she said, unwilling to pretend away hunger. While they waited he kept talking, anchored to ordinary things. The river running low, a fence line due before frost, asters still purple near his porch. From the kitchen, onion, pepper and browned meat pulled treacherous comfort through her resolve. I know your given name, Nathan said. Folks mentioned a mother and child came in on Wilson's wagon. They said Eliza and a girl with clever braids. If you want the rest kept close, that's yours. She set caution down. Harper. Clara is 6. The facts landed between them like small coins, honest tender. Bowls arrived, generous and steaming. Biscuits split to reveal cloud-soft center. Clara's first bite stole watchfulness from her face, leaving wonder. Eliza broke bread slowly so her hands would not tremble. Nathan waited until they had begun before lifting his spoon. Between mouthfuls he continued. 2 hired men help with cattle. A third comes when the herd drifts. Sophie keeps our garden better than I do. There's a spare room that could be yours and Clara's until anything feels settled. Eliza lifted her gaze. And freedom to leave if safety proves illusion. He didn't flinch. If either of us fails the promise, I won't hold you with law or expectation. 6 months to build trust. If it doesn't take, I'll see you escorted wherever you choose. With wages for your labor. She had not expected boundaries to be given before she asked. She drew a breath. James left debts. Men followed. I don't know which of them knows this town. Nathan nodded. Debt can twist a man cruel. If trouble rides after you, better I know. I don't scare easily, and I keep my word. He did not ask for amounts or names. Restraint itself felt like the first trustworthy thing she had heard in months. Clara sated, hummed wagon songs, ankles swinging under the bench. Eliza smoothed a curl from the child's brow. I won't trade my daughter like a cat. Nor would I expect it. Nathan answered. I'm offering a partnership that lets 2 girls sleep without listening for every creak. The bell rang as a ranch hand stepped in, clapped Nathan's shoulder and moved on. The world did not care that Eliza balanced a future on a spoon. That indifference steadied her. The sky would not fall if she chose wrong, yet her small family might, so she must choose well. Why me? She asked. Because I saw you refuse a coin without insult and accept a blanket for the child without apology. When men stared, you narrowed your shoulders around your girl instead of shrinking. Grief knows grief. Lines on his face spoke of son, work and patience. And Sophie. She misses a mother, but she isn't trying to replace Sarah. She wants to be seen as a person, not a task. Eliza pictured a bright-eyed girl guarding a garden against rabbits, listening for boots she would never hear again. When bowls emptied and plates held crumbs, Nathan paid and stood, waiting while Eliza wrapped Clara's shawl. Outside, the afternoon tilted. Wagons rattled. A dog chased its shadow. The horizon wore a copper band that promised frost soon. I won't ask for an answer today, he said. Think on it. I'll bring Sophie by tomorrow if that suits you. She should meet the girl who loves biscuits. Eliza's laugh surprised her, light, reluctant, real. Tomorrow suits, she said. Then added, I need a little work today. An honest task for an honest coin. Nathan gestured toward the livery. McKinnon pays for sweeping and filling water buckets when he's short on boys. Tell him you're willing. If he gives you grief, say I sent you. He tipped his hat and stepped back. The door closed behind him. Space opened inside Eliza's chest. Not empty, simply possible. She counted what had changed since morning. A hot meal. A conversation that did not bruise. A plan that did not require miracle. Hesitation loosened its hold, replaced by a fragile strand of consideration. She tucked Clara's hand into her own. What do you think? Clara grew solemn. He's tall, and the biscuits were big. Eliza kissed the child's temple. They walked toward the livery, boots whispering against swept boards. Eliza folded the creased warning note deeper into her pocket. A practical offer waited 5 miles west. Grief would follow wherever memory wandered, yet a table had room for 2 more plates. And winter moved. She squared her shoulders, ready to trade effort for coin, ready to consider a bargain that might give 2 little girls the one thing hunger could never buy. Nathan returned the next afternoon with a small wagon and a calm bay mare. He halted by the general store, kept the reins light, and called without crowding. If you'll ride out to my place, Sophie would like to meet you. Eliza measured him, then the road, then Clara's thin cheeks. Prudence warned against favors. Winter warned against pride. She helped Clara climb, accepted a spare shawl, and sat straight beside her daughter. Nathan clicked his tongue. The wheels took hold, and Cedar Creek drifted behind one storefront at a time. They rolled past the smithy's ringing hammer. Beyond town the road became ruts bordered by switchgrass. Hills opened under a pale sky. Nathan drove as if he and the mare shared one mind. Sophie named that rise Quilt Hill, he said. In spring it looks stitched. Clara leaned forward. Eliza tucked the blanket tighter, and kept watching Nathan's hands steady, patient, never needing to prove command. Silence lay easy. Then he asked Clara which stories she liked best, and listened to the answer as if it mattered more than the weather. The grade lifted. At the crest the ranch came clear. A sturdy house with a deep porch, a ticking windmill, a red barn faded toward brick, paddocks stepping down to a willow-lined creek, a garden where late beets held their ground. Nathan set the brake and stepped down. The front door opened, and a girl with dark curls came out, remembering to slow after a few bouncing steps. In the afternoon he called. "We brought guests." "Hello, ma'am." "Hello, Clara." The girl said, voice careful and sweet. "This is Sophie." Nathan added. She stood a touch tall for her years, boots scuffed, palms clean from recent washing, eyes bright with nerves and hope. Eliza climbed to the porch. Boards were swept. A rocking chair showed a mended slat. A tin of marigold seeds sat beside twine. The open door revealed a braided rug and neat shelves. "Barn?" Sophie asked, glancing at Nathan. "Barn," he said. They followed a path through crisp leaves. Inside, bars of honeyed light fell from high windows. A roan flicked an ear. A bay nosed her manger. A shaggy pony flattened its ears for show, then decided visitors could stay. Sophie moved among them with easy confidence, palm open, voice steady, steps unhurried. "This is Cricket," she told Clara, stroking the pony's coarse mane. "He tries to look fierce, but he likes braids." Clara giggled and offered 2 fingers. The pony lifted his nose, accepted the greeting, and blew a warm breath on her wrist that made her glow. Nathan leaned on a stall door, and told small truths, which gate stuck after rain, which horse nipped if you turned your back, and why Sophie brushed before supper. From a crate near the last stall, came a chorus of peeps. Sophie lifted a towel to reveal butter-yellow chicks under a lamp. Clara gasped and covered her mouth, then looked up for permission. Eliza nodded. "Make a little nest with your hands," Sophie coached. 2 fingers on the back, not too hard. Clara obeyed, nerves settling into wonder, as the tiny heartbeat ticked against her skin. They crossed to the porch where a plate waited under a towel. Ginger cookies dusted with sugar gleamed. Nathan poured milk from a lidded jar and offered tin mugs. The first bite cracked, then melted into warmth. Clara licked a sparkle from her lip and sighed. Eliza allowed herself a second, because dignity should include joy. Nathan proposed a tour. The vegetable rows showed careful hands, straw tucked around cabbage heads, parsley refusing to quit, a broken hoe mended with tight leather. "I keep things as she arranged them, because they work," Nathan said, not flinching from the past. "And because Sophie feels close to her when the blue flowers open." Inside, the kitchen held a blue crock of wooden spoons, a kettle humming, and clean counter. "If you stayed a while you'd set your own ways," he added. "We'd do what suits you." "Where would we sleep?" Eliza asked. He opened a door to a small east-facing room. A cheerful quilt lay on the bed. A hook waited for a shawl. A washstand held fresh soap. The window framed pasture. "You'd have your own space," he said. Eliza half rose to scold when Clara bounced, then saw Nathan's smile and let the moment stand. In the main room, Sophie produced a tin soldier, and placed it beside Clara's rag doll with ceremonial care. "He can guard her if she gets scared." Clara studied the toy. "He looks brave." "He is," Sophie said, "when somebody's watching." Nathan and Eliza shared a look that held more understanding than either could name. Nathan asked Eliza where the wood box should sit so the draft wouldn't steal heat when the door opened. Eliza imagined mornings here. Porridge steaming, boots thumping, a list of chores pinned to a peg, 2 girls negotiating over who got the blue mug. When the sun dipped and the fields went the color of brass, Nathan lit a lamp, but did not press for an answer. Eliza stood by the hearth, warmth at her back and open ground ahead, and weighed fear against everything she had witnessed. A child offering friendship like bread, a man who used quiet like shelter, a home built by a woman whose touch steadied the place without freezing it. Clara yawned. Sophie hid her own behind a wrist and adjusted the soldier's stance. She looked at Nathan. "We should go before the dark climbs the hills." "I'll hitch up," he said. "Thank you for coming." They stepped out of the barn into a light that made every blade of grass look newly hammered. Sophie trotted ahead, then paused to make sure Clara kept up. An instinctive kindness that struck Eliza deeper than any promise. On the porch steps, Nathan waited without crowding, letting the girls set the pace as if he understood that trust grows best when it isn't tough. Eliza took a slow breath, and admitted, if only to herself, that the day had not felt like a performance. It felt lived in, boots by a door, tools repaired rather than replaced, a tin soldier promoted to sentry by a child who needed him brave. She thought of Sarah, a woman she had never met and yet could almost hear in the order of the shelves and the stubborn cheer of the quilt. Grief clearly still walked these rooms, but it didn't demand silence. It kept step with chores, with cookies shared on a plate, with a pony's foolish swagger. Eliza did not mistake warmth for safety, yet she could not deny that warmth had its own kind of strength. If a house could hold both memory and room for new footsteps, perhaps a life could too. Truly, near the halfway tree, Nathan spoke. I won't promise what I can't keep. What you saw is what I can give. If it isn't what you want, I'll still be grateful you visited. Eliza kept her gaze on the fading light. It felt real, she said. Not a performance. Clara pressed close. Mama, she whispered. The chicks were warm. Eliza kissed her hair and let one tear escape into the wind where nobody had to claim it. What would you do in Eliza's place? Trust a stranger for your child's future. Share your thoughts below. The wagon rattled on toward a town that suddenly seemed too small for old fears and just large enough for new vows. At the edge of Cedar Creek, the street lamps blinked awake, and in their modest glow she felt something steady itself. No guarantee, only a direction bright enough to try. Supper waited. When Nathan brought Eliza and Clara back at dusk, the sky banded with copper and violet, while the windmill clicked like a clock. Mrs. Thompson had come earlier with a covered pot, warm bread in a blue cloth, and a pie that sighed cinnamon each time someone passed. She left a note, "Eat while it sings." Nathan hung his hat and invited Eliza to sit, careful to leave room for choice. Sophie ferried spoons and mugs with determined grace. Clara stood on tiptoe to smell the bread, then looked to her mother. Eliza nodded, and the girl smiled as if light opened inside her chest. They said a quiet thanks, then passed bowls. Stew rose with onion and pepper, beef yielding under the spoon. Warmth spread through a place Eliza had kept cold, and her shoulders lowered from the guard hunger built. Nathan poured milk for the girls, looked to Eliza and asked whether the fire felt too hot or too low, a small question carrying a larger one. Are you comfortable here? It surprised her that the answer was nearly yes. Talk began with ordinary things. Nathan described a fence that tilted after rain, a gelding that opened its latch, and a wind that taught strong men to bend. He admitted he could fry eggs and make beans, but baking turned dough into bricks. Sophie added that he burned pancakes on both sides, and called them cookies. Clara asked whether horses dreamed. Sophie said they did because Cricket snorted and kicked in his sleep. Eliza listened for the hook that so often hid under charm. None appeared. When plates stood half empty, Nathan turned toward flowers because Sophie kept a ledger of planting. Sophie explained saving marigold heads in paper bundles, blue flax that liked warm stones near the porch, and morning glories that climbed any path. She confessed she talked to seedlings when nobody listened, and that sometimes seedlings answered by living when the weather curled mean. When the girls drifted toward play, Nathan rested his hands on the table. You gave me a little truth yesterday, he said. If you want to keep the rest shut, I will keep still. Eliza held her mug. Either she would say nothing and let uncertainty grow thorns, or she would risk the sting and cut vines back. She chose risk because the room had steadiness in its bones. My husband died in a bar fight, she said, voice even through effort. People assumed a cave-in took him because a neat story sits easier on a ledger, but drink and anger made a mess that never paid a bill. Debts trailed us. Some men brought sour smiles and friendly warnings, others chalked marks no rain could scrub. I sold what I could, hid what I had to keep for the child, and learned that pride without bread breaks faster than bread without pride. We came here because the road ended before the money did. She let the words settle without apology. Nathan did not rush to fill the quiet. Thank you, he said. Simple as water. I lost Sarah late last year. Fever took hold fast, We had a baby on the way. I kept telling her we would name the child come spring when the colts found legs. She drifted. By the time snow laid a clean sheet across the pasture, I put 2 names in the earth, one I had known and one I had only spoken to through warm wood. Eliza bowed her head in recognition. Pain met pain and found company. How does Sophie hold it, she asked. She plants, he said. She hums when she folds towels and reads to chickens. Grief does not vanish, it eats supper with us, then helps wash dishes. Eliza breathed out half a laugh. That seems right. From the parlor rose a ripple as Clara scolded a wooden hen for wandering near the soldier's post, and Sophie negotiated a treaty involving crumbs and a parade. I don't want to step where I am not wanted, Eliza said, nor do I want to mistake kindness for a contract. Nathan nodded. You will never owe me more than we agree. If we try this and it fails, I will deliver you safely to wherever you choose next. If it works, we will both have earned peace. She felt the promise wake a part of her that had dulled under constant watching. I carry one more thing, she said. A warning reached my pocket before you spoke to me, 3 hurried words and tomorrow's date. I don't know if it is a bluff or a trial tightening, only that I can't pretend it does not exist. Nathan did not bristle. If trouble shows, we will meet it in daylight. I do not hunt fights, but I do not step away when safety demands a stand. Eliza studied his face and found readiness. That steadied her more than any oath shaped like thunder. Pie came next, sliced with reverence. Crust flaking into shards that caught lamplight. Sugar and apple warmed corners better than whiskey ever had. Clara returned to request the smallest respectable piece, and Sophie to request exactly half of whatever her friend received. They ate at the hearth, then vanished to build a fort behind a rocking chair. Eliza asked about the nursery. Sophie sleeps in her own room, Nathan said. The nursery remains closed by my promise to Sarah, until the right day tells me otherwise. I will open it only when it heals more than it hurts. Eliza respected the boundary. She knew rooms that held breath and waited for a sign. Another log shifted in the stove. Outside, coyotes yipped far off, and a horse stamped once. I would like to see Sophie again before I decide, Eliza said. The girls found each other quickly today, but a day can shine brighter than the week that followed. I want to know whether light holds when chores return and moods tilt. Come tomorrow or the day after, or both. Nathan said. We will fix lunch, stack kindling, and let hours prove what words cannot. Clara called to report that the hen had learned to march. Sophie announced that the guard had agreed to share his biscuit with poultry. Eliza watched, and the sight pushed her decision toward maybe. She thanked Nathan for the meal, for space, for telling the worst truth without shine. He offered to drive them back before the chill deep. They gathered shawls, tucked leftovers into a parcel, and stepped onto the porch. Night smelled of hay, iron and sage. Stars stitched across the dark. She said she would come again tomorrow at noon if work at the livery ended in time. Nathan said he would set 2 places regardless. He helped them into the wagon and kept the mare to a quiet pace. When the last light fell behind, Eliza looked back and saw the window glowing like a star. She faced forward and held Clara while the road carried them toward town, cautious, hopeful against her will, strengthened by truth traded in lamplight and laughter, rung like bells from a room where 2 girls practiced belonging. Eliza kept her promise, and reached the ranch at noon, the wagon rolling through dry leaves while the bay mare flicked quiet ears. Sophie waited at the gate, remembered to slow, then offered Clara a ribbon the color of latest stirs. Nathan met them near the porch with sleeves rolled and a dusting of flour on his wrist. Welcome back, he said, voice steady, smile careful. Eliza answered, afternoon, and stepped inside where sunlight pooled on a braided rug and a kettle breathed on the stove. Sophie guided Clara to the table, laying out a brush, ribbon and a small box of wooden beads. Want to learn a rope braid or the 3-strand first? She asked. Clara's eyes shone. The rope one, please. The guard can watch, she added, nodding at the tin soldier still posted on the mantel. Sophie saluted the figure. He approves of lessons that need courage. Nathan gestured toward the corridor. Before we eat, may I show you the room again in daylight? Eliza followed while the girls began, Sophie's soft instruction threading through laughter. The guest room faced east. A quilt stitched from patient squares covered the bed. A washstand held fresh soap and a folded towel. A glass jar cradled marigold seeds for spring. Nathan kept to the doorway. No lock unless you ask. If you stay, you set the rules. Eliza studied the seams. Care had been stitched into every line. She pictured Clara waking to a window that promised morning rather than another road, and her eyes filled before she could master the rush. Nathan did not step closer. Take your time. She drew a long breath. I have measured every kindness for a trap. This room looks like it needs help without a hook. I want to believe what it says. Believe what you can test, he said. We'll test it together. They returned to the kitchen. Sophie parted Clara's hair with ceremonious precision and began a neat rope braid. Fingers moving with sure rhythm, Clara sat very still, solemn until a giggle escaped. The sound joining the kettle's whisper. Nathan set a tray on the counter. Mrs. Thompson sent me instruction. I can mix dough, but the oven believes her more than me. Eliza tasted a biscuit. Steam kissed her palm. Butter warmed her tongue. Something inside her eased. Sophie tipped beads into Clara's hands. Pick two colors that belong together even when they fight. Clara chose blue and gold. Sky keeps sun company even when clouds argue. Affection grew between the girls like ivy finding a good wall. Nathan poured coffee. Did the window latch feel smooth? Smooth, Eliza said. Good. Winter mornings move fast. Stuck latches sour tempers. He told a brief tale about chasing a hat halfway to the creek. Sophie called that fathers who chase hats teach ponies mischief. Clara agreed with priestly gravity. After lunch, stew warmed, biscuits shared, an apple sliced into crisp moons. Nathan asked if she wished to see the pantry, cellar and smokehouse key. Eliza appreciated open doors. Hidden information was a kind of control. They toured quickly and returned to find the lesson had become a trade. Sophie learned a skipping rhyme. Clara learned a story about a foal that drank from a bucket and wore his reflection for a mustache. Laughter rang like bells. Nathan leaned on the frame. Partnership. No pressure. Tasks are fairly divided. Your say weighs the same as mine. Eliza let the words settle. My pride is not a necklace I can pawn. It is the last coin that carries my name. If I stay, I contribute. I will not be kept. Kept is a word I will never use for you, he answered. We build or we stop. If we stop, I will deliver you safely with wages for work done. Sophie finished the braid and tied it with the aster ribbon. Clara admired her reflection in the kettle, and hugged Sophie so fiercely that the soldier nearly toppled. He recovered with stoic dignity and resumed his watch. Eliza and Nathan cleared dishes in companionable silence. Work done beside another loosened muscles she had held tight for months. In the corridor he added, one more thing. Sophie's room is at the end. Mine beside the kitchen. The nursery across from yours. It stays closed until memory and present can share the same breath. Eliza nodded, grateful for honesty that did not invite her to mend what should rest. They stepped back into the main room. Sophie stood with hands clasped, brave and trembling. She looked at Eliza, then Nathan, then Clara, who gave a solemn nod as if releasing a secret signal. Excuse me, Sophie said, voice small but clear. I have a question only you can answer. Eliza waited. Sophie drew a breath that lifted her onto her toes. Could you be my mama? The house held still. Eliza's hand went to her throat, then fell because she refused to hide. Clara pressed against her side like a small guard. Nathan kept very still, not rescuing the moment or shaping it. Eliza knelt so her eyes met Sophie's and found hope, fear and a fierce courtesy that asked without grabbing. She remembered nights on hard floors, mornings when hunger made words brittle, and miles that taught her to carry grief like a wrapped ember. She remembered the guest room where a quilt waited for breath to slow, and a window ready to open when heat grew stubborn. A yes would bring shelter and work. It would also bring promises she must keep with care. Her pride weighed heavily, her longing for stability weighed more. She spoke slowly. I cannot give a forever answer today. Promises deserve days as well as feelings. But for right now, I want to try. If your father agrees, Clara and I can visit for a while, help with chores, sleep in the guest room and see if our days fit without force. Sophie's shoulders dropped with relief, then lifted with shy joy. She hugged Eliza fast, as if lingering might scald the courage that had carried the question. Nathan let out a breath that sounded like gratitude turned into wind. Trial visit, he said. Partnership rules. We go slow. Eliza looked from him to the girls. Her mouth trembled into a smile she did not fight. Have you ever faced a choice between pride and survival? Tell us in the comments. We'll bring our things tomorrow after the livery, she added. If the room still looks like help without a hook, we'll stay the week. The windmill clicked. A horse stamped. Sophie handed the tin soldier to Clara. He guards the door from worry. Eliza believed, not in magic but in the discipline of small kindnesses practiced until they outlast fear. Their trial would begin with light, with biscuits, with a braid that kept neat through chores. Torn between caution and the promise of a new beginning, she chose movement toward hope, not because hope never fails, but because movement gives hope a place to stand. Outside, clouds gathered like slow herds, the season leaning toward frost, and Eliza felt the road behind her shorten, while the path ahead, uncertain yet brightened by faces, invited careful steps. Eliza met Nathan by the windmill at first light, boots damp with dew, shawl pinned tight against a morning that tasted like tin and apples. She had spent an hour arranging thoughts, and now named the terms needed to live without fear. Time to build trust, she said. Voice level. Work that matters, not token chores. An option to reassess in 6 months. With wages for labor if we part. No demands on my private history until I share it. My say equals yours about the girls and the house. If any part turns false, we end clean. Nathan listened. Agreed, he answered. He extended his hand, palm open. Eliza weighed the gesture like a coin, then placed her hand in his. The shake felt firm, neither claiming nor pleading, only binding. The windmill clicked as a witness. They carried the news to the kitchen, where Sophie and Clara waited with mugs of milk and a plate of biscuits. Sophie searched Eliza's face and found the answer before words arrived. Trial, Eliza said, smiling despite the tremor under her ribs. We build. We measure. We decide in 6 months. Sophie hugged Clara, then hugged Eliza, careful and quick as if promises breathe better when not squeezed. By afternoon, Eliza and Clara had moved a modest bundle into the guest room. A shawl, a spare dress, a rag doll with mended seams, 3 books, a needle roll, a comb, a tin cup, a tiny carving from Eliza's mother, and a folded note tucked inside a pocket Bible. Nathan showed the loose hinge on the washstand, promised to fix it, and left them space. Eliza unpacked with deliberate order, claiming a drawer for Clara's treasures and another for mending. The quilt looked like a field stitched from patience. She opened the window to let the room learn her breath. Routine formed by the second morning. Nathan wrote lists with a blunt pencil. Check gates. Mend the strap. Clear limbs from the north pasture. Collect eggs. Set dough. Soak beans. Scald jars and lay kindling. Eliza studied the marks and added notes. Marigold heads drying near the window. Late squash curing by the stove. Vinegar for glass. Ashes for the garden. She discovered a knack for rows. Plants that had sulked lifted their chin. She loosened soil around beets. Tied back a drooping tomato. And tucked straw under cabbage. Her palms took on that faint green scent earned by work. Chores are divided without quarrel. Nathan hauled, split and set posts. Then repaired a chair rung while Eliza kneaded. She had not trusted flour since fleeing, because flour feeds a home, and homes can vanish when men arrive with paper and guns. Here she worked the dough until it turned smooth as a shoulder. Biscuits rose. Bread cooled on a rack. Nathan fashioned from leftover lattice. He joked that the rack performed so well that an apron might salute it. His gentle humor lowered a rope into rooms Eliza had shuttered. She answered with small smiles that came quicker each day. Clara thrived under Sophie's guidance. They fed chicks, measured grain and debated which pony held the most secret wisdom. They braided, unbraided and braided again. Sophie taught Clara to read cloud shape for wind and ear tilt for moon. Clara taught Sophie a skipping rhyme and how to make a doll cradle from a folded towel and 2 books. At dusk, they sat on the porch with tin mugs of milk and counted bats threading the fading light. Laughter rose like swallows from the eaves and settled on the sill like a promise. Eliza kept accounts in a notebook, Sarah had used for seed orders. Tidy rows filled the first pages. She drew a line beneath the final entry and began a record for bread, eggs, soap, jars, kerosene, and nails. Nathan never looked over her shoulder without asking. When he did ask, it sounded like respect, not suspicion. She set aside a purse labeled future, and another labeled safety. Pride did not vanish. It learned numbers. She mended shirts but refused to carry every task alone. Nathan washed pots without drama. Sophie dried, Clara stacked, and the kitchen behaved like a small town with fair laws. Sundays carried them into Cedar Creek. They sat in the back pew while Reverend Hayes read announcements, his voice the kind that softened nails before the hammer fell. After hymns, he lifted a bands. He said for a union to be witnessed by this community when the parties are ready. Nathan Brooks seeks lawful marriage with Eliza Harper, widow, residing at the Brooks Ranch, 5 miles west. Speak now if you know a reason they should not. Heads turned then eased when Nathan inclined his head, and Eliza met the gaze of the room without flinching. None spoke. A hymn followed that felt less like tradition and more like a roof beam. After meeting, Mrs. Thompson waylaid them with preserved peaches and advice delivered like blessing. She told Eliza that a kitchen respects the hand that respects the knife, that salt mends more than pork, and that a widow seeking steadiness is no scandal, only sense. 2 ranchers offered shingles. The blacksmith promised a fair price for extra egg. The storekeeper slid a ledger toward Eliza without asking Nathan to sign, then said he liked dealings that stayed square. No one questioned the trial. Most understood the weather and the need for a shelter that fits. Back at the ranch, days linked like a chain. Eliza learned to set a shoulder against a stuck door without twisting her back. Nathan learned her signals. The stillness that meant let me finish the thought. The smile that meant a joke landed. He brought her twine and a new pencil without ceremony. She brought him coffee at the fence line. When a stubborn post required persuasion. When a norther blew in, they moved as a unit, latching shutters, hanging quilts, banking the fire. The wind moaned across the flats but the house held. Evenings settled into something near peace. Nathan read from a handbook about soils while Eliza pieced a bright patch for a mending job that wished to become decoration. He respected her independence without show. She gave him room to keep faith with promises to memory, including the nursery door that stayed shut. A boundary both on. Sometimes they played checkers while the girls built forts of quilts and chairs. A domestic truce that felt earned. Each night before sleep, Eliza reviewed her conditions. Time to build trust. Honored. Meaningful contributions. Option to reassess in 6 months. Written on a calendar with a soft mark. Not a threat, simply rigor. Wages if they parted agreed and witnessed by Mrs. Thompson, who initialed a line with an unapologetic flourish. Boundaries. Her say equal. Proven when Nathan accepted her plan to move the woodbox and rearrange shelves for reach. Each check soothed a muscle she had not known she held clenched. Still, caution kept a chair near the hearth. The note in the Bible had not dissolved. Nathan did not pry, but he made preparations useful against weather and men alike. Hinges oiled, gate pins tight, a lantern by the door for long nights. He taught both girls how to shout from the diaphragm, so a warning would carry. He showed Eliza the trick of loading the small shotgun without pinching skin, then put it away unless she wished to practice. Care moved through the house like water, finding every dry cup. On a calm afternoon the girls planted bulbs by the porch, heads together, whispering names for spring flowers. Eliza stood with her hands in warm dirt. Nathan came from the barn with a repaired hinge, and stopped beside her. We are not perfect, he said, and I will fumble, but I am here. She looked at the yard, the porch, the window with its east light, then at the girls, one tall, one small, both writing their first shared season in soil and ribbon. She looked at him, the man who met terms with action. I know, she answered, and the words felt like water after salt. That evening, with stew simmering and dusk laying violet on the fields, Nathan washed his hands, dried them, and faced her with the stance he had used under the windmill. 6 months from today, we will sit with our ledger and our hearts and measure what we have built, he said. If the sum shows a home we move forward. If it shows strain we cannot mend. I carry you and Clara wherever you choose, with full wages and thanks for every honest day. Eliza nodded. Then we are agreed. They shook again. Simple as drawing breath. The girls clapped as if a play had reached intermission and the best scenes waited in the wings. Reverend Hayes announced the bands again. The next Sunday. Voice bright as brass. The words did not feel like chains. They felt like steps laid under careful feet. Neighbors smiled. Some brought seed packets. One left a basket of clothespins carved smooth. When they rode home, Clara leaned against Sophie and hummed, and the road seemed shorter, as if the land approved a partnership built on terms spoken aloud. The house waited. Lamps ready. Eliza set her ledger on the table, rolled up her sleeves and joined the work that would turn a promise into a steadier life. Truly. Dawn broke clean and bright over Cedar Creek. The kind of morning that makes roofs gleam and breath hang like silk above the pasture. Church bells rested in the steeple while neighbors drifted up the boardwalk in their best, boots polished, hats brushed, shawls pinned tight against the crisp air. In a small room behind the sanctuary, Eliza smoothed a blue wool dress sewn by townswomen who had folded courage into every seam. Mrs. Thompson had checked the hem. Mrs. Arnold had added a discreet row of stitches at the waist, and someone had tucked a sprig of rosemary into the workbasket for remembrance. Clara stood beside her with a tiny bouquet of wild flowers gathered at dawn, asters, goldenrod, and a stubborn violet that had refused to yield to frost. "You look like a storybook," Clara whispered. Eliza kissed her forehead. "So do you," she breathed once more even and steady, then took her child's hand and turned toward the light. Nathan waited near the altar with Reverend Hayes, boots quiet on the plank floor, hair tamed more than usual, jaw set not with nerves but with reverence. The congregation filled the room with a pleasant hush. Ranchers folding big hands, wives settling children, friends exchanging looks that said we were here when the storm hit and we are here now. Sunlight braided through tall windows, laying bright rectangles over hymnals and turning dust to glitter. When the bell tolled, the doors swung inward and the music rose, simple and lovely. Sophie stepped first, chin high, curls tied with a blue ribbon. Carrying a small psalter wrapped in linen, she placed it on the rail and lifted her gaze to Nathan, who gave the smallest nod, the kind that says, "I see you, I'm proud, keep going." Then Eliza entered with Clara at her side. The blue dress moved like quiet water. Clara's flowers trembled but Eliza set her shoulders and walked in time to the hymn, remembering the night on the general store steps, a careful voice and the courage it took to accept terms instead of pity. Now the courage felt quiet. At the front, Reverend Hayes welcomed all and asked for stillness, though the room had already offered it. "We are gathered," he said, "warm and plain, to witness a covenant made deliberately and kept daily." He looked at Nathan. "Do you vow to respect and protect, to listen before speaking, to keep faith when weather leans hard?" "I do," Nathan answered, voice clear as creek water after rain. He took Eliza's hands, careful and sure. The Reverend turned to Eliza. "Do you vow to speak truth without fear, to tend peace without surrendering your say, to guard these children and this home with wisdom and grace?" Eliza's throat tightened, then eased. "I do." She began her vows. "I came to this town with a child and a past I could not polish. You met us with terms, not chains. I promise to build what we promised, post by post, day by day, giving thanks when ease arrives and grit when it does not. I will keep our table honest, our accounts clear, our girls safe and our door open to decent neighbors." Nathan followed. "I promise to make room for your say at every table. I promise to be steady in strength and exact in fairness. I promise to honor the memory that still shares our roof and to open the nursery door only when the day heals more than it hurts." Rings lay in a linen pouch in Nathan's coat. He lifted a simple band. "This is not a tether," he said. "It is a circle to remind me to begin again when I falter." Eliza slid it home and offered the matched band she had polished with baking soda and a scrap of linen. "This is not a claim," she said. "It is a sign that I will walk beside you on days that shine and days that demand courage." The Reverend blessed the joining, calling for patience, humor and the habit of forgiveness. "He now declares you husband and wife," he added, smile bright as brass. Applause rose, joyous and clean. Nathan kissed Eliza with decorum that respected the place and still said clearly, "We belong." Sophie squeezed Clara's fingers and Clara whispered, "Sisters," with a certainty only children dare. They walked back down the aisle through neighbors who had known work and loss and still chose celebration. Outside, light poured over the church steps. Ranch hands offered grins that they pretended were not tender. Mrs. Thompson dabbed at her eyes, then declared she had pie to go. The celebration spilled into the town hall where tables wore checkered cloths, and jars of asters nodded from every sill. A fiddle tuned, a guitar found a warm chord, and the plank floor promised to hold whatever joy the town set upon. Food lined the sideboards in generous ranks, ham glazed and sliced, potatoes dotted with dill, beans baked to sweetness, biscuits wrapped in towels, pies that tested plates. Nathan pulled back a chair for Eliza and did not sit until she had settled. Neighbors arrived with packages and promises. The blacksmith vowed to fix a hinge. The school teacher pressed a slate into Clara's hands with a wink. The storekeeper said the account would stay square. Music took the room by the hand. Nathan danced with Sophie, then with Clara, then offered his palm to Eliza, who stepped into the reel with a smile that reached her eyes. They moved together without show, the rhythm of chores translating into grace beneath lantern light. When the tune slowed, he asked, "You all right?" She said, "I am," and knew it true in marrow. Reverend Hayes tapped his glass for a toast. "To the Brooks household," he said. "They built trust like a fence line, corners braced, posts set deep. May storms test and find strength. May harvests be honest. May the table never lack light." Mugs lifted, laughter scattered like seed. Eliza felt her place anchor, not in spectacle but in modest acts. A slice of pie slid onto her plate without request. A stack of wood pledged for winter. A smile from a woman whose grief had taught her how to bless another's joy. What does family mean to you? Share your story in the comments. For Eliza, family felt like two girls leaning shoulder to shoulder while crumbs dotted their sleeves. Like a husband who watched her face for signs and adjusted quietly. Like neighbors who measured character by steadiness rather than rumor. As dusk folded itself around the hall, lanterns burned gold and the band struck another set. Sophie taught Clara the steps to a square that made even shy feet brave. Nathan's hand brushed Eliza's as they reached for the same platter, and the touch threaded warmth through the day. Later, outside under a sky pricked with early stars, the town gathered coats and promises. Mrs. Thompson tucked a loaf into Eliza's basket and whispered that tomorrow would be ordinary and therefore sacred. The preacher shook Nathan's hand and told him that vows breathe best when rooms are swept and tempers counted to 10. Snow came early and stayed. By December, the ranch lay under a white hush, fences capped, the creek sealed with glass that sang when wind skimmed low. Smoke rose straight from the stovepipe on still mornings, a clean seam against pewter sky. Work never stopped. Yet the rhythm changed. Boots chose careful paths. Doors shut softly. Heat pooled where stories gathered, and fingers thawed over mugs that steamed like little chimneys. Eliza shaped the weeks with a surer hand than any season since arriving. She measured beans by the palm, kept dough rising at the back of the stove, and set one orange on each girl's plate when a neighbor's crate came up the road. Nathan stacked wood along the porch, tidy as pledges. Sophie and Clara mastered tasks for small arms and bright spirits. Scattering grain for hens, tapping ice with a wooden mallet, shaking quilts, until cold turned to glitter in the lamplight. Scarves hung by the door like small banners of courage. Laughter traveled under them often. Storms taught patience during one long blow that made the windmill sing like a church organ. The four of them read aloud by turns. Sophie favored garden tales that beat frost. Clara adored animal adventures solved by clever kinship. Nathan delivered 2 pages from a soils handbook, then hid a grin when the girls traded theatrical snores. Eliza chose a little book of poems, letting lines settle like feathers on quiet water. Between pages came modest duties, adding a split log, refilling the kettle, checking latches, tucking stray hair behind an ear. Later, with the sky still drumming, they told small stories that had never found a listener before. Sophie's memory of Sarah teaching stitches, Clara's secret fear of thunder, Nathan's misnamed calf that never learned the truth, Eliza's first loaf that rose so high it fell in love with the stove door. The house learned its voices, the way a tree learns wind. Sundays they rode to town when drifts allowed, faces rapt, eyes bright above scarves. The sanctuary breathed warmth as friends stamped snow from boots. Reverend Hayes preached short in winter, preferring hands that helped to words that linger. After the benediction, Neighbors pressed gifts into palms: soap, preserves, wool mitts knit by someone whose eyesight had dimmed but whose stitches remembered steady ways. Each gesture laid another covering across the household. Belonging felt less like a spectacle than like a coat put on without thinking. Christmas approached on silent feet. Eliza set fruit in a bowl, tied a ribbon to a fir branch, and tucked cedar over the mantel until the room smelled like promise. She baked ginger biscuits and a cake with dried apples soaked in cider. Clara and Sophie made paper chains and looped them across the shelf where the tin soldier kept watch, his chin rubbed shiny from frequent salute. Nathan slipped to the barn more than once, returning with sawdust on his sleeves and the satisfied look of a man smoothing something meant to last. On the evening itself, snow softened edges outdoors while lamplight burnished faces within. They ate stew that had whispered all day, lifted the lid from sweet carrots, and shared cake in generous quarters. After the dishes, Nathan set a small parcel wrapped in muslin on Eliza's palms. "For you." Inside lay a wooden box, walnut dark, smooth as river stone, carved with wild flowers along the lid, lined with soft cloth. The hinge moved like a kind thought. Eliza traced the petals. "I have not had a place for keeping since before the road grew long," she said. "Now I." She lifted her own gift from the mantel, a journal bound in brown leather, stitched by the saddler's apprentice who owed a favor. She had added a pencil pocket, and pressed rosemary inside the cover. "For notes worth saving," she told him, "and for days that want counting by more than posts and miles." Nathan opened to the first page where she had written a single line: "Begin again." His smile looked like lantern light in a calm room. Sophie and Clara exchanged treasures too: a ribbon for the doll, tiny knit slippers sized for the soldier, a bead string long enough to circle both wrists twice. Laughter turned the room warmer than flame. When quiet returned, Nathan looked at Eliza as if asking a door to open. She met his gaze, felt steady courage settle through bone, and stepped near. The kiss they shared was not a hurried brush. It was a patient acknowledgement of something built board by board, seasoned by weather and work. It tasted like cinnamon and clear. He drew back only to speak the thing he had carried. "I am falling for you," he said, "not grand, simply exact." Eliza let a soft laugh fly. "I am falling too," she answered. "I thought fear would always keep two hands on my shoulder. It turns out fear learns manners when kindness shows at the door." He rested his forehead against hers, then kissed her again. A little braver, a little truer. The girls peeked around their quilt fort, cheeks bright. Sophie whispered, "Mama Eliza." Clara echoed with delight, as if the name had waited behind her teeth for weeks. Eliza opened her arms and gathered them close. "Yes," she said, feeling the title settle like a shawl that finally fit. The four of them stood in a circle that looked ordinary and felt miraculous. A household drawn clear by use rather than legend. Winter did not ease after the holiday. Cold still argued with hinges and nipped any glove that forgot diligence. Yet the ranch answered with order. Mornings began with ash swept neatly, coffee perking, bread crisping in the pan. Nathan wrote notes in his journal: fence repairs, calf weights, a line about snow glittering under moonrise like ground stars. Eliza stored letters and keepsakes in her box: a scrap from Clara's first ribbon braid at the ranch, the recipe for Mrs. Thompson's pie, a tiny skein Sophie wound while reciting seed lists by heart. The box made history into something she could hold without it spilling. Sophie and Clara became inseparable, partners in chores and mischief, an alliance sealed by jokes and a language of looks. They fed hens before dawn without being told twice, raced to the woodpile with little sleds when paths turned slick, and argued only over whose turn it was to carry the lantern. Their duet of Mama Eliza threaded through rooms until even the kettle seemed to learn the sound. One clear night, after a run of iron weather, the sky opened like a book of ink and ice. Nathan brought blankets to the porch, and they lay shoulder to shoulder while the girls counted meteors, squealing each time light scratched the dark. Eliza tucked her hand into his. "I used to count miles," she said quietly. "Now I count seasons. It feels different in a way I could not have imagined when we met." Nathan squeezed her fingers. "I used to count losses," he replied. "Now I count lights. I prefer your measure." Late in January, Eliza woke before dawn with a soft certainty she could not name at first. It glowed like a candle in an inner room. She sat up, counted the days, pressed a hand against her body, and let a smile bloom in the dark. When Nathan stirred, she kissed his shoulder and spoke into the quiet. We will need another quilt by next winter. He blinked, then grinned so wide she laughed again. He gathered her close, whispering thanks into her hair as if the word itself could take root and grow. That afternoon they told the girls by the stove while cinnamon cooled on biscuits. Sophie covered her mouth, then clapped, half laughing, half crying. Clara spun in a circle and declared that the soldier would guard the cradle. Plans sprouted. Which room, which color, which lullaby would suit a spring arrival. Nathan touched the nursery door and said softly, "When the day helps more than it hurts, we open this room." Eliza laid her palm over his and felt the last old fear loosen like a knot eased by patient finger. Have you found love in unexpected places? Let us know below. Snow kept falling through February as if the sky wanted to write a long letter. Nobody could finish reading. The ranch answered with steadiness. Chores done, jokes traded, stories read, hands held when worry pressed. By the time the sun leaned toward March, Eliza's steps had a new carefulness, and her smile carried a new center. The family felt complete and still opening, like a window raised on the first mild day, air sweet with thought. On the final night of the harshest cold, they sat close to the stove and watched coals pulse like hearts. Nathan wrote a brief entry, then set the journal aside and took Eliza's hand. Partnership made room for feeling, he said. Feeling made room for joy. She answered with a nod that meant yes to both. Outside, the wind lay down at last. Inside, warmth settled deep. Sophie yawned and leaned against Eliza's shoulder, nearly asleep. Clara curled at her knee with the soldier under one palm, guarding dreams whose names would arrive when spring did. Morning found the yard winking with ice crystals, the fence throwing tiny rainbows, the steps dusted like cake. Eliza stood in the doorway and rested a hand on the life growing within. Nathan came behind and wrapped his arms around her waist. Not to steer, only to share the view. We began again, he murmured, remembering the line she had written. We did, she said, and felt the truth reach every room. Sophie shouted from the coop that an early egg had arrived, freckled and They gathered at the table, set the egg in a bowl as if placing down hope, and laughed when Clara saluted with the tin soldier. Outside, snow would keep melting and freezing until spring made up its mind. Inside, the household already had. Love had come on quiet feet and stayed, trading in biscuits and braids, ledgers and laughter, woodpiles and warm hands. By the tender light of an uncertain season, Eliza Harper, wife, mother, gardener, ledger keeper, felt the shape of a new life settle around her, and the child within quickened the promise of everything that waited just beyond the thought. Spring arrives like a gentle drumroll across the pasture. Soft rains tapping the fields until green lifts in patient sheets. Eliza stands in the garden with one hand on the curve of her growing belly while Nathan's arms encircle her from behind, steady as a post set deep. The air carries damp loam, sweet clover, and the chatter of two girls near the seed box. Sophie kneels beside Clara, showing how to set pea seeds at a thumb's depth, firm the earth without bruising, and whisper a wish toward roots. The wind answers by moving the willow's young leaves, and the whole yard seems to inhale. They plant in measured lines. Sophie stretches twine from peg to peg with a surveyor's pride. Clara taps each mound twice, claiming the ritual invites courage. Nathan rests his chin on Eliza's shoulder and speaks in that quiet tone born from equal parts work and tenderness. You've taught this yard to listen, he murmurs. She smiles. It listened because you gave it tools and faith. He brushes a kiss against her neck and breathes the scent of rain. The ranch began as a refuge, a spot to catch breath and count supplies. Now it lives as a home. The porch keeps overlapping boot prints that read like a friendly argument. The kitchen holds a ledger of biscuits in good sense. The parlor remembers winter stories, and leaves room for spring songs. Even the barn has changed. It smells of hay, leather, and the orange peel. Sophie tucked by the tack to sweeten morning. Eliza looks across beds framed with stones. Nathan hauled last week and lets gratitude move through her without apology. Storms may still lean hard and fences will still need repair, yet the columns of their life now balance because intention sits beside patience. She walked here from scarcity. She lives here with steadiness and purpose. The ground answers, and so does the child within. A flutter like a small bird testing new wings under her palm. Nathan's hands tighten gently, not to steer her, only to share the view. Clara bounces over with dirt on her knees and solemn purpose in her small fist. Mama Eliza, she says, opening her palm. This bean is the brave one. It wants the spot near the warm rock. Eliza crouches carefully and nods. Then brave things belong exactly where heat lingers. Sophie salutes with the trowel and announces that a patrol will guard tender shoots against bold rabbits. The old pony Cricket lifts his head, snorts once and resumes chewing. They work in companionable silence. Nathan spreads compost. Eliza ties trellises. Sophie lays markers neatly. Clara arranges smooth stones to make tiny boundaries that feel official. The creek runs over rock. Meadowlarks run bright threads through the air. From the road come far voices, friendly and unhurried, reminders that Cedar Creek stands close enough for company, and far enough for a family to keep its shape. When the sun climbs, they carry jars of cool water to the porch steps and drink until laughter returns. Eliza sets Nathan's hand beneath hers across her belly. Life answers with a gentle turn, a flicker like a fish in clear water. He stills, reverent. Hello there, he whispered. We are ready for you, and lists quiet promises, quilts, songs, a cradle and a tin soldier who takes guarding seriously. Sophie pledges to teach seedling language. Clara vows to share the good ribbon, not just the practice ribbon, which in a world of scarce luxuries means everything. She thinks of the first evening on the general store steps, the careful offer spoken without pressure, the wagon ride through Copper Hills, the guest room that looked like help without a hook. She remembers trial terms, steady handshakes, banns read in a wooden church where neighbors measure people by steadiness more than gossip. She remembers a hard winter that tested hinges and hearts, a Christmas of carved gifts and plain words, and the first true kiss beside lamplight when love arrived on quiet feet. Nathan's embrace tightens a fraction when a breeze cools. Do you know what I see? He asks. A garden that trusts its keeper and a home that keeps its promises. Eliza answers, I see two girls who will remember this hour whenever they plant a seed anywhere else in their lives. Sophie, catching a scrap of the sentence, declares she will sow blue flax wherever she lives so she can always find her way back, even if she never leaves. Clara replies that she intends to plant cookies. Everyone laughs and the talk wanders like sunlight across water. They return to the rows for a last pass before washing. Eliza slides a low fence of willow twigs to guard lettuce. Nathan marks sowing and harvest dates on a slate so work and reward will rhyme. Sophie labels jars for saved seed. Clara carries compost in a pail smaller than her determination. Work moves like a song built from four voices that know when to lead and when to rest. When chores pause, Eliza breathes damp earth and realizes she no longer listens for footsteps from the past. She listens for the seed of tomorrow. They wash at the pump, wincing and laughing when cold water shocks wrists. Shirts on the line billow like a welcoming committee. Cricket wanders to the fence and pretends to supervise. Mrs. Thompson's cat circles Eliza's skirt and claims a sunlit board as a throne. The world does not beat a drum for milestones. It nods and carries them forward by inches. Ordinary beauty stands its ground. Eliza straightens, wipes a damp curl from her cheek and lets Nathan pull her closer. Truth settles with gentle weight. A widow has become a wife. A careful mother has become the still point of a circle that holds. A ranch that once tested them now answers like a promise kept daily. Sometimes the greatest risks yield the greatest rewards, she thinks, and the baby nudges as if seconding the motion. Nathan hears the breath she did not know she released, and presses a kiss into her hair. She looks at the garden, the porch, the bright line of the creek, and the two girls kneeling shoulder to shoulder and feels gratitude large enough to share. I did not imagine this path, she says. I am glad I walked it anyway. Nathan nods. You chose it one honest step at a time. Sophie raises the seed packet like a banner. Clara waves, then returns to her duty of tapping courage into the soil. Birdsong weaves the afternoon into cloth. The sky carries light clouds toward evening without threat. Eliza turns to the reader. She imagines beyond the fence line, someone listening for a sign that faith can sit beside self-respect. If you have ever weighed pride against survival, she would tell you that firm terms, steady actions, and daily kindness can teach fear to wait. A partnership has a sound you can learn. Space left for your say, laughter that never takes anything back, doors that open rather than close, and promises honored when nobody is watching. That sound fills this yard. It can fill yours. Tell a friend about it. What did you think of Eliza and Nathan's story? Rate it out of 10 in the comments and share how it touched you. Stay tuned, what happens next will shock you.